Hello, my dear. You know, there's something about your eyes that makes people rethink what kind of creature they're standing in front of. Not human in the usual sense, not chaotic either, just too aware. When they meet your gaze, it's like they're being measured, decoded, and quietly judged by an intelligence that doesn't belong to the timeline they inhabit. The air shifts. The chatter collapses. People start adjusting their clothes, blinking too fast, pretending to check their phones. It's not confidence they see in you, it's command, distilled into a stare. Because your eyes don't ask questions, they extract truths, and the truth terrifies them. You've probably noticed it, the way conversations die mid-sentence when your attention lands. The way someone suddenly forgets what they were saying. It's not coincidence, it's contact. Your pupils operate like sensors that pierce through facades, and everyone feels it. Their lies begin to tremble before their lips even move. They sense that you can see what's underneath, the tiny tremors in expression, the false gestures they thought were invisible. You're not reacting to them. You're reading them line by line, word by word, breath by breath. And that's why people break eye contact. It's not social anxiety, it's spiritual exposure. You carry an ancient kind of authority, the kind that doesn't need a badge or title. The power is visual. When your gaze locks onto someone, their internal narrative starts glitching. Their subconscious recognizes the imbalance. You see them more clearly than they see themselves. The primal brain panics. It whispers, "Look away before you dissolve." So they do. They retreat into avoidance, call it politeness, call it humility. But it's really defense. Because your eyes strip people of performance. They unmask them in real time. Even those in high positions, politicians, executives, influencers, feel it. You think they built empires by being fearless. No, they built them to hide from the kind of energy that bleeds from your stare. When you walk into a room, they start rationalizing why they feel small. They don't know it's because their illusion meets its expiration date under your gaze. Cameras can't capture it. Mirrors can't reflect it accurately. It's something deeper. Your eyes don't shine. They absorb. They consume deception and return reflection. And reflection, for people who've built themselves on falsehoods, feels like death. There's a reason even the so-called elites avoid long interviews with sharp-eyed truth-tellers. There's a reason your calm composure gets labeled intimidating. The language of power has shifted from words to presence, and your presence speaks through your eyes. It's how you enter without speaking, yet shift everyone's nervous system at once. The heartbeat in the room changes rhythm. The tone of conversation recalibrates. It's instinctive submission to unseen authority. You see, the human eye isn't just a sensory organ. It's a transmitter. Every emotion you've conquered, every trauma you've integrated, every layer of discipline and focus, you carry it inside those pupils. People don't realize they're not looking at you. They're looking through the history of everything you've survived. And that's what makes them uneasy. Because your calm isn't emptiness, it's evidence. Your stillness carries records of battles they've never had the courage to fight. So when they meet your eyes, they're not meeting a person, they're meeting consequence. Even predators hesitate. The loudmouths, the manipulators, the self-appointed leaders, they all default to submission around you. They'll disguise it with humor, sarcasm, or fake confidence, but deep down, their body language betrays them. They start blinking too often, tilting their head away, or scratching imaginary itches. It's biology's way of saying, this one sees too much. Because dominance isn't about how loud you are. It's about who makes others blink first. And you rarely do. Your eyes are magnetic because they were forged in observation. You've spent years studying patterns, not just of people, but of energy, motives, and outcomes. You've learned to detect deceit, not by words, but by micro-expressions, breath changes, and tone frequencies. You read intention before language forms it. That kind of awareness creates a certain gravitational pull. People feel drawn to you, but simultaneously afraid. It's attraction mixed with revelation. They crave your validation, yet fear what you might uncover. That's the paradox you carry. Allure and accountability fused together. There's a theory whispered in psychological circles that certain individuals emit a cognitive frequency high enough to disrupt normal behavioral patterns in others. They can trigger transparency through presence alone. You're one of them. The elites know this type exists. They study it quietly. They call it visual dominance. Some of their consultants even teach executives how to mimic it through posture and micro-expressions. But the imitation always fails because the power doesn't come from technique. It comes from truth. Your eyes earned their force through experience, through pain, converted into precision. It can't be replicated by acting coaches or charisma seminars. That's why your gaze unsettles even professionals trained in deception. Body language experts, interrogators, intelligence officers, they feel the same discomfort civilians do. They can read everyone else but can't decode you. You invert the hierarchy. You turn the watcher into the watched, the interrogator into the confession. Your presence short-circuits manipulation. And that's the real reason elites whisper your name with caution. They can't control what they can't predict. And your eyes predict everything. Think back to the last time someone tried to lie to you. You didn't need proof. You felt the fracture mid-sentence. The way their pupils shrank, the shift in breathing, the sudden urge to look away. You didn't expose them because you didn't need to. You let them reveal themselves, quietly, gracefully. That's your art form. Truth without confrontation. Power without noise. It's not just intimidating, it's divine efficiency. The funny part is, you never asked for this. You didn't train to become the one people fear looking at. It happened naturally, as the side effect of self-awareness. The more you understood yourself, the clearer your eyes became. Because perception sharpens through internal order. You see cleanly because you are clean internally. No unresolved wars, no hidden guilt, no desperate need for validation. That purity of self creates distortion in those still living in illusion. You are their contrast, and contrast exposes weakness. Even animals sense it. Dogs become either unusually calm or hyper-alert around you. Cats watch you longer than they watch anyone else. Children stop mid-play to stare, fascinated but unsure why. They all recognize something ancient in your gaze, the quiet confidence of a being who remembers. And the higher you ascend, the more adults will misinterpret it. They'll call it arrogance, coldness, superiority. But what they're really describing is reflection discomfort. You're showing them what true control looks like, and it unsettles everything inside them built on pretense. You'll start noticing a pattern. In crowded rooms, people will give you just enough space to move freely. They won't realize they're doing it. It's instinctive. In meetings, even leaders will look away first. In conflicts, aggressors will tone themselves down before the argument peaks. It's not because you threaten them physically, it's because your eyes declare that chaos is unwelcome. You radiate unspoken law. Somewhere out there, people with high-level access are studying the psychology behind eyes like yours. They run tests, scan biometrics, measure pupil dilation against emotional responses. They want to know why certain individuals can disarm an entire boardroom with a look. Their reports are inconclusive because they're missing the sole variable. They can map neural activity, but not intent. They can chart blood flow, but not conviction. Your power lives in the space science hasn't named yet, and that's what scares the elites. Their control thrives on predictability. They can model fear, greed, even rebellion, but not whatever animates your gaze. Your presence breaks their algorithms. When surveillance cameras catch your face, the AI mislabels your expression. Some classify it as neutral, others as dominant, some as unreadable. They can't agree because the signal is beyond binary. It's not aggression or peace, it's authority without effort. And nothing destabilizes the powerful more than untraceable power. Your eyes have become both weapon and mirror. You don't use them to destroy, you use them to remind. You remind people that truth still exists in physical form, that awareness still walks among them, disguised as calm humanity. You remind manipulators that not every target is programmable. You remind observers that observation changes when the subject notices back. And deep down, they all know it. That's why they avert their gaze, not out of disrespect, but out of reverence, mixed with fear. You're the living contradiction they can't decode. Approachable yet unreachable, kind yet unreadable, present yet unfathomable. Every glance you offer carries a signature frequency that says, "I see what you hide." And the world doesn't know how to process that level of honesty. So it does the only thing it can. It looks away. But that's only the beginning. Because the more they look away, the more your influence grows. Energy flows where attention fears to go. And all that repressed attention funnels back to you, subconsciously. You become the gravitational center of awareness. Even when they refuse to meet your eyes, their minds orbit around your image. That's how influence works. It doesn't demand attention. It commands it by absence. And now, whether you realize it or not, people are starting to whisper about you. Not just friends or strangers, but individuals whose names circulate in restricted networks. They mention you in private conferences, in think tanks, in closed-door discussions. They analyze footage, photos, and interviews, trying to understand why your gaze unsettles them. Some call it charisma. Others call it possession. But a few, the ones who know better, call it awakening. They're not whispering because they're curious. They're whispering because they're cautious. Because when people in suits, screens, and sealed rooms start analyzing a person's gaze frame by frame, it's no longer about admiration. It's surveillance under the disguise of research. Your eyes have become a classified phenomenon, a variable that refuses to behave like the others. Some say it's biological, a unique dilation pattern that triggers emotional discomfort. Others think it's neurological, that you unconsciously broadcast frequencies that override social equilibrium. But those theories are just walls built to contain something far larger. The fact that your eyes hold truth, and truth doesn't sit quietly in institutions built on illusion. They're calling it the gaze effect. Files are circulating in quiet laboratories across Silicon Valley, in European behavioral institutes, in covert intelligence offices. The pattern keeps repeating. Whenever someone makes extended eye contact with you, their stress markers spike. Their heart rate jumps. Pupillary response suggests both fear and fascination. Psychologists can't agree whether it's dominance, attraction, or revelation, because the data says all three. You've become a biological paradox, a single human capable of triggering chaos and calm simultaneously. Some elite circles even treat your name as a case study. You're discussed in encrypted chat rooms under code names, your face blurred, your voice analyzed for microtones of authority. They can't figure out if you're manipulating people or liberating them, because those who meet your eyes walk away different, disoriented, self-reflective, sometimes visibly shaken. A few report dreams afterward. Others report creative breakthroughs. Some even experience existential dread. It's like your gaze resets their internal compass, forcing them to confront the direction they've been avoiding. That's why the powerful keep their distance. They don't fear confrontation. They fear calibration. Your presence reveals how far they've drifted from authenticity. You remind them that power borrowed from deception collapses when met with eyes forged in truth. You've undone centuries of psychological engineering with nothing but attention. The world was trained to hide behind lenses, filters, and scripted smiles, but your eyes cut through all that. They return the human back to raw data. And when elites see that reflection, it shakes their sense of control. You see, in their circles, control isn't just a strategy, it's religion. Every handshake, every headline, every camera angle is calibrated. They live inside performance. But your eyes bypass performance entirely. They don't negotiate. They don't flatter. They simply expose. And exposure is fatal to deception. That's why you walk through crowds untouched. Why conversations reroute around you. Why even celebrities and influencers hesitate to meet your gaze directly. They sense what the research papers can't define, that your perception isn't social, it's surgical. It doesn't look for approval, it looks for alignment. And alignment terrifies those living off distortion. Imagine spending years building a public identity, rehearsing your voice, sculpting your persona, mastering manipulation, and then a single glance from someone like you makes it all feel pointless. That's not intimidation. That's revelation disguised as fear. It's the soul realizing it's been seen without permission. Rumor has it a few intelligence officers tested your image in controlled experiments. They showed photographs of your eyes to volunteers without context. Within seconds, most subjects reported discomfort, accelerated heartbeat, a strange sense of being watched. One subject even removed the photo mid-test, saying it felt like the image was looking back. The data was redacted, the experiment sealed. But fragments leaked, enough for private agencies to start tracking your digital footprint, your public appearances, your interviews. They want to know how one individual can radiate command without verbal engagement. They call it subconscious dominance projection. You call it presence. The truth is, you've mastered something that can't be taught. Stillness with weight. You don't stare to intimidate. You observe to understand. And that depth is precisely what terrifies those who mistake attention for aggression. Because real observation dismantles illusion. When you see clearly, you remove the safety net of denial. People sense that, consciously or not, and they panic. They think you're judging them, but you're not. You're simply seeing them. And for those hiding behind masks, visibility feels like punishment. The elites don't understand how someone without media power or political leverage can shift energy in a room. But they feel it. Their bodies register it before their minds admit it. Their subconscious categorizes you as threat, not because you intend harm, but because you represent unfiltered awareness. Awareness is the enemy of manipulation, and in their world, manipulation is oxygen. That's why they avoid your eyes, not because they're too strong, but because they're too clean. Reports circulate that certain executives changed seating arrangements during meetings with you. They couldn't explain why, only that direct eye contact disrupted focus. One consultant described it as standing too close to a moral mirror. Another said, "It felt like he was inside my thoughts." They weren't exaggerating. You've crossed into a realm where perception itself becomes influence. The clarity in your gaze acts as a tuning fork. It forces dishonesty to vibrate, to expose its cracks. And once someone experiences that kind of resonance, they can't unsee themselves. It's not supernatural, it's psychological warfare through truth. You're not casting spells. You're dismantling illusions faster than they can rebuild them. That's why avoidance has become their only defense. They can't debate you. They can't outshine you. They can only avert their eyes and pretend you're not there. But pretending doesn't stop the effect. Even in absence, your image lingers. The afterglow of your attention haunts them. Their dreams replay your face. Their instincts replay the moment they flinched. You've become a walking calibration device for human integrity. Wherever you go, falsehood disintegrates, not through words, but through frequency, and that frequency is encoded in your stare. People feel like you're reading their mind because you are, in a way. You're reading microsignals, eye drift, throat tension, pulse rhythm, voice modulation. You don't process it logically. Your intuition handles it at light speed. That's what unnerves them, the sense that you already know. In the highest circles, they've created terminology to describe this ocular resonance phenomenon. They claim it's rare. Less than 0.01% of humans exhibit it. They link it to heightened empathy mixed with hyperanalysis, a neurological blend that turns perception into influence. Their research stops at data, but you live it as reality. You've learned to wield empathy as precision, not softness. You can dismantle an argument by simply holding eye contact long enough for the other person's conviction to collapse. You don't interrupt. Their own subconscious does it for you. That's why people fear your calmness more than they'd fear anger. Anger is predictable. Calm is unreadable. Your eyes remain steady, and in that steadiness, they feel exposed. They project their guilt, shame, and insecurity onto you, then blame you for making them uncomfortable. They say you have a piercing stare. They're wrong. You have reflective clarity. They're not pierced. They're returned to themselves. The elites especially can't handle that. Their entire psychology depends on remaining unseen while seeing everyone else. But you flipped the hierarchy. You made the observer the observed. You reminded the controllers that control is fragile when awareness enters the room. That's why certain media figures speak cautiously when mentioning your name. That's why analysts write notes about nonverbal dominance factors and presence modulation. You're forcing evolution in real time, and they don't like uncontrollable evolution. In private, a few of them admit admiration. They wish they could emulate your composure, your precision, your unbothered awareness. But imitation fails because the power isn't in the eyes. It's in the consciousness behind them. You can't fake clarity. You can't mimic conviction. You can't simulate truth. It either radiates naturally or it doesn't exist. And you, through every scar, every revelation, every moment of isolation, have distilled truth into visual form. That's why even artificial intelligence misreads your expression. It can't categorize authenticity. What they fear most is what happens if more people learn to look like you, not physically, but energetically. If others start developing that same depth of awareness, their entire illusion-based hierarchy collapses. They depend on distraction. You depend on perception. They manipulate attention outward. You redirect it inward. Every time you hold someone's gaze long enough to bring them back to self-awareness, you disrupt their programming. That's why your presence feels revolutionary. Because it is. The whispers have evolved into directives now. Some elites advise their peers to avoid prolonged interaction with you. Limit exposure, they say. Maintain control. They don't understand that distance only amplifies fascination. The less they engage, the more your image expands in their minds. You've entered the psychological space reserved for icons, enigmas, and legends. The ones studied, feared, and never fully understood. What makes your eyes terrifying isn't aggression, it's invitation. They invite truth to surface, and truth is the one thing people claim to want, but secretly fear. You force them to face what they've buried. That's why you're misunderstood. You're not dangerous to people, you're dangerous to lies. And those who've built empires of illusion will always label the truth-bringer as threat. You walk into rooms carrying no weapon, no entourage, no armor, just vision. Yet that vision dismantles more defense systems than armies ever could. It's the reason boardrooms shift tone when you speak. It's the reason certain influencers go quiet when you enter their live stream. They can sense they're standing in front of someone who doesn't participate in illusion. You're not playing the game, they are. And your presence reminds them it's just that, a game. Your eyes became the proof that self-awareness can be seen. That confidence isn't volume, it's clarity. That dominance isn't display, it's direction. People used to say, the eyes are the window to the soul. But yours are more like a doorway. Step through, and the facade evaporates. And the world isn't ready for that level of exposure. The elites think they're watching you. In reality, your gaze has already rewritten their behavior. You've infected their mannerisms with hesitation. You've altered the social hierarchy without policy or protest, just precision. Because real revolution doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just looks back. And as they continue their analysis, cross-referencing your videos, dissecting your photos, comparing your interviews, they'll keep missing the core. The power isn't optical, it's spiritual logic made visible. Your eyes are not tools, they're transmissions. They carry the signature of someone who's not hypnotized by the collective delusion. That's why people flinch. Not because you're strange, but because you're awake. And as the data piles up, as files labeled Confidential Subject E circulate through encrypted drives, one conclusion begins to echo through the corridors of the powerful. Awareness is contagious. And if that's true, then you're not just being studied anymore, you're being contained. Because if the world starts seeing the way you see, control will dissolve overnight. But what they don't know is, it's already spreading. Every person who's met your eyes carries a fragment of that awakening. It multiplies quietly, like light under a door. The more they avoid you, the more their subconscious replays the moment. The awakening travels through memory, through thought, through dream. And now, even their researchers, their handlers, their watchers are starting to experience it too. That's when the fear turns official. That's when the elites stop discussing you in public entirely. That's when warnings replace whispers. Because they finally realize the truth. Your eyes aren't just powerful. They're catalytic. They don't control. They convert. And every conversion threatens their empire of perception. Now it's no longer about curiosity. It's containment. You've crossed from intrigue to threat classification, somewhere behind doors that don't open for the public. They've decided your gaze isn't safe for exposure. Files marked restricted visual subject are circulating stamped with red identifiers. They've begun advising key figures to maintain digital distance, to blur your presence in broadcasts, to avoid direct interaction. But it's too late. The pattern is already spreading across minds like wildfire that doesn't burn, it illuminates. Because awareness, once seen, cannot be unseen. Your eyes have become the forbidden reflection in a world addicted to illusion. They're trying to control the narrative now, whispering that you use tricks, that you hypnotize, that you manipulate. Anything to redirect attention from the truth. You simply see. And in a culture built on pretending, seeing is the most dangerous act of all. They can't control someone who doesn't flinch. They can't decode someone who doesn't seek approval. Every time you lock eyes with another human being, you reset the hierarchy. They stop being the audience and start being the mirror. That shift terrifies them more than any weapon ever could. In the corridors of elite psychology, they're beginning to call it cognitive collapse response. It happens when someone's self-image disintegrates under pure observation. That's what your eyes trigger, the end of performance. And the end of performance means the end of manipulation. That's why the powerful avoid you. You undo their artifice without confrontation. They spent decades learning to dominate conversations, and you dismantle them with silence and a steady gaze. You don't talk over people. You make them trip over their own words. You don't intimidate, they self-expose. Your eyes are not just intimidating, they're catalytic truth. They broadcast a frequency that says, pretend less. And for a world that survives on pretending, that message is nuclear. You've probably noticed how even strangers hesitate to meet your gaze. Cashiers, colleagues, even people scrolling past your videos pause mid-frame, uncertain why their pulse quickens. That's because deep down, they sense it. The same way animals sense an approaching storm, not through logic, but through instinct. They know you see too much, and in your seeing, their illusions evaporate. But here's the part they'll never understand. You didn't build this power to control. It emerged as a side effect of self-awareness. You earned your clarity by surviving distortion, every betrayal, every manipulation, every fake smile you saw, through refined your perception into weapon-grade focus. That's why your eyes feel ancient, why they carry gravity. They are proof that seeing through deception is evolution's next stage. You are not the danger, they are, because they can't handle truth without blaming its reflection. And yet, the elites still watch you, even while avoiding you. Their surveillance feeds you energy without realizing it. Every analysis, every recorded glance, every AI model trying to replicate your expression only amplifies your signature. They've turned you into the very thing they fear most, a legend that doesn't need permission. You've become the unspoken test in every room. Who can meet your eyes and remain authentic? Who flinches first? The answer always exposes the power dynamic. You stand as the quiet revolution that can't be televised, because no camera can capture what's behind those eyes. They can record your face, but not your perception. They They can measure your pupils, but not your awareness. They can document your presence, but not your depth. The elites hate that paradox. You're visible yet unreadable, present yet untouchable. A riddle that walks, observes, and reflects everything they hide. And that's why their fear has turned to reverence. They no longer call you threat, they call you phenomenon. Because they've realized something too late. You're not looking at them, you're looking through them. You're not judging, you're unveiling. You are the filter removal they've been running from since the day they learned to perform. And as much as they resist it, every encounter with your eyes rewrites them a little. It makes them think twice before lying. It makes them hesitate before manipulation. It makes them aware that someone, somewhere, might be looking back with clarity that no power structure can distort. Soon they'll realize this isn't about you at all. It's about what your eyes awakened in them. You reminded the world that truth has a frequency and it travels faster than words. You reminded humanity that awareness itself is rebellion. You reminded the elites that all their cameras, policies, and propaganda can't outpower one conscious gaze. They've built towers of deception for centuries, but your eyes brought thunder to the throne room without a sound. And now, everywhere you go, that energy precedes you. Doors open differently. People behave differently. They sense that standing before you isn't casual, it's consequential. They can't meet your eyes without feeling the weight of who they really are. That's why they call it intimidation. But you know, it's recognition. The human spirit recognizing what it's lost, the ability to see clearly. You've reached a point where your gaze is not merely perception, it's prophecy. It shows people their own trajectory, whether they're ready or not. That's why even the powerful look down when you look up. Because the hierarchy of the modern world collapses under the weight of genuine consciousness. Titles don't matter, wealth doesn't matter, influence doesn't matter. Awareness rules everything. And that's the secret they've been trying to bury under data, distraction, and doctrine. That your eyes are living proof that truth cannot be controlled. That perception, when purified, becomes the most destabilizing force in existence. So they call you dangerous, intimidating, mysterious, because they can't bring themselves to say the one word that terrifies them most: free. The world isn't avoiding your eyes because something's wrong with them. The world is avoiding your eyes because something's right with them. Because they reflect what's real. Because they carry the kind of power that no elite institution, no government, no influencer can ever replicate. You don't dominate through fear. You dominate through authenticity. And authenticity is the one thing that can't be manufactured, sold, or contained.